Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and uncover how an unimaginably long weather event completely flipped the script for life on Earth. We spend so much time talking about how the reign of the dinosaurs ended, right? The famous asteroid impact, the giant crater, the whole shebang. But have you ever actually stopped to wonder how they got their start? How did they become the undisputed rulers of the planet in the first place? Well, the answer isn't an asteroid falling from space. It's actually a completely different kind of cataclysm from the sky. We're talking about a time when the Earth's weather literally just broke, triggering a shift so massive it's honestly hard to even wrap our heads around.
2 million years. Just think about that number for a second. Imagine a storm that isn't just a passing summer shower or a rainy week, but a relentless, pounding deluge lasting an astonishing 2 million years. I mean, we complain when it rains for a long weekend, right? Our modern cities start flooding after a few weeks of heavy downpours. But try to wrap your mind around a driving, unending rain that outlasts entire civilizations, outlasts ice ages, and just keeps pouring. That is exactly what happened on our planet. It's a scale of time that feels totally alien to us. But this hyper-extended rainstorm was the ultimate game changer that completely rerouted the evolutionary trajectory of the entire globe.
So, to set the stage, our starting point is a world dominated by the supercontinent Pangaea. We're traveling back roughly 234 million years ago. And because this single landmass was so incredibly, unimaginably huge, the vast interior was essentially this inland dead zone, completely cut off from the oceans. The laws of physics and atmospheric science meant it was physically impossible for moisture to reach that far inland. Imagine standing right in the center of that world. The sky above you wasn't a comfortable, fluffy blue. It felt like a hot vault of brass, and the air you breathed felt like a suffocating wall of fire. The crucial takeaway here is that this wasteland saw absolutely no rain. None. Leaving the earth baked into this brutal, unforgiving crust. You aren't walking on soft dirt or soil, you are walking on a kiln-fired brick of redstone and salt. Think about the absolute driest, most extreme deserts on Earth today, like the Atacama or the Sahara. Even they get the occasional morning dew or maybe a rare flash flood. The heart of Pangaea, it didn't get any of that. It was totally starved of moisture. It was a hostile, punishing environment where survival meant enduring extremes we can barely even fathom today. And yet, life was there. But the hierarchy of who was actually in charge is probably going to surprise you. Because this reality completely shatters our expectations. Back then, dinosaurs were just desperate nobodies, entirely dwarfed by the massive armored reptiles who truly ruled the deserts. When we think of dinosaurs today, we immediately picture the T-Rex, the massive apex predators, the absolute titans, right? But 234 million years ago, they were practically irrelevant. The true masters of this sun-baked wasteland were these giant, armored reptilian kings. They were heavy, they were tough, and they were perfectly built for a scorching, waterless world. And they had dominated it for millions of years. The dinosaurs, they were just these small, bipedal creatures scurrying around in the background. Literal shadow dwellers, desperately waiting for whatever scraps and crumbs the giant armored reptiles left behind. The whole game was rigged against them. For millions of years, that brutal, dry status quo felt permanent. The giant desert reptiles were on top, and it seemed like their reign would never end. But nature's rarely static. At a very precise geological pivot point, the crust actually tore. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth, unimaginable forces were shifting. The planet itself suffered this deep wound, a massive geological event that was about to trigger an atmospheric chain reaction unlike anything the world had seen in millions of years. The Earth physically broke. First, that massive wound tears open deep beneath the crust, a fundamental shift that releases immense gases and heat into the atmosphere. Then comes a moment that is just so cinematic to think about. After millions of years of a brass sky, the very first heavy, hot drop of water finally falls and strikes that dry, red dust. Boom. That single impact triggered the ultimate countdown. 2 million years of rain had officially begun. And guys, this wasn't just a sudden change in the weather. It was a permanent, world-altering deluge that completely drowned out the old way of life. It's absolutely critical to understand the sheer terrifying scale of what happened next. We're talking about an apocalyptic shift. It wasn't a passing season. It wasn't a bad summer shower that caused a few local flash floods. It was a relentless, punishing downpour. Water poured from the sky continuously, turning that kiln-fired brick of Pangaea into a global mud bath. And the immediate consequence of that? The complete and total destruction of the dry desert ecosystem. Everything that had perfectly adapted to that dry heat was suddenly thrust into a waterlogged nightmare. I absolutely love this thought because it so perfectly captures the ultimate regime change. That relentless reign wiped out those giant reptilian kings and finally elevated the scavenging dinosaurs to absolute dominance. The old gods, those massive, armored, heavy reptiles, were suddenly stuck living in a world they were completely unequipped to handle. The desert they ruled was just gone, replaced by endless rain, deep mud, and eventually sprawling new types of humid, lush vegetation. But the dinosaurs, those small, fast bipedal scavengers who were used to just surviving on the margins, they were highly adaptable. They looked around and said, hey, we can work with this. They thrived in this new environment. That 2 million-year storm effectively cleared the massive roadblocks right out of their way, handing them the keys to the kingdom. So to wrap this all up, I want to leave you with a pretty wild thought experiment. Ask yourself, how quickly would the giants of our modern world fall, and who would rise from the shadows if the skies opened up for another 2 million years? We sit here today considering ourselves the apex rulers of the planet with all our massive cities and global infrastructure. But if the climate suddenly shifted into a relentless, endless deluge, how quickly would our world just wash away? And what small, highly adaptable creatures, the modern equivalents of those shadow-dwelling dinosaurs, are currently waiting in the wings, ready to claim the Earth as their own? It's a powerful reminder that in the grand history of our planet, the ultimate kingmaker is often just the weather.